Okay, we rise for the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Marcus, can we swear you in?
Why don't you read what the call the document?
Call that first.
Yeah.
Okay. We're here to discuss docket number 2210, Zenith Construction Company, 1730 Elkwood Hills, Suite 101, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21740. Applicant is requesting a special exception to pursuant to Section 380-20-B 2B1 of the zoning ordinance, allowed multifamily dwellings on the properties of Sierra Glen Panthers Partners and located in the village zone at 209 and 285 Church Road, Edders, 17319. Bring tax parcel 39000 PG 0016 DO 00000 and 39000 PG 0025 A 00000. Swear me.
You able to give a would you swear in our code? State your name and position for the record, please.
Marcus Brandt, the Codes Enforcement Officer for Newberry Township.
For this particular application, do we have publication of the notice in the newspaper?
We did, I did send out the notice on the 7th of November, 2022. Advertisement dates were November 10th and 17th of 2022. It was also posted at the Newberry Township Building on November 7th, 2022. Mailers were mailed out to residents at within 300 feet of the application, and that was done on November 15th, 2022, and the property was posted November 10th, 2022.
Is there anything that you'd like to report or state with regard to the application?
This is being streamed and recorded, and other than the chairman's mic, you have to push the button when you speak for it to be heard, unless you switch it, as a solicitor is, to talk. So it's push to talk or turn it. Thank you.
I will forget half the time. No. Mr. Brandt, is there anything that you'd like to add or report to the board before we begin with the application?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Who do we have present for the applicant, please? Would ask that you come up to the mic so that it's can be recorded.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is John Andrews. I'm a land use attorney with McNeese, Wallace & Nurick in Harrisburg.
Okay. Okay. You may begin. It's your application.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Sure.
Again, for the record, John Andrews with McNeese. Here with me tonight is Justin Kuhn with Integrated Consulting. His colleague Elliot Shibley is hiding in the back. and Jason Wheeler with Traffic Planning and Design. We are here on behalf of Zenith Construction Incorporated, the applicant tonight. The application before you is for a special exception to permit an apartment complex. Your zoning ordinance calls them multifamily dwellings. This would be a 120-unit complex on the western side of Church Road. They are permitted by special exception in the Village District, which is the zoning district where the property is located. The terminology special exception is a misnomer. I think you've been through this before, but for the sake of the audience, it's neither special nor an exception. It's a use that the zoning ordinance expressly states is permitted in that zoning district, so long as we, the applicant, show that the design of the project complies with all the ordinance requirements. So that's the burden we have before you tonight. Also, for the sake of the audience, this is the first step in a multi-step approval process for a project like this. Something like this, if we're successful tonight, still has to get what's called a land development plan approval, both something called preliminary and final. That's a township process that occurs at public meetings, both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and it takes many months to go through that process. And in addition to that, we would need other permits and approvals from outside agencies like the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and the York County Conservation District. So even if we were to be successful tonight, we are many months, if not a year, away from commencing any construction. So just want to make sure that that's clear from the outset here. I'm going to pause to pass out exhibit packets before continuing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to orient you to the property, it was identified by the tax parcel numbers by the chairman, but this is in about the central part of the township. Honestly, not even a mile as the crow flies away from here. It's a little over 15 acres when the two lots are combined. It's bound on the east by Church Road with the cemetery across the street. And then there are existing single-family dwellings kind of around it on all the other sides. And as I mentioned, this is in the Village Zoning District. We're proposing 10 apartment buildings. In each building, there would be 12 units, so it's a total of 120 units. Each building would be 3 stories tall, 4 units per floor. So that's how you get to 12 units per building. Each of the units would be 3-bedroom units. To serve those apartment buildings and the tenants, there's 365 off-street parking spaces proposed. And then the access drive coming out to Church Road. We'll provide testimony to get into more specifics about that. Just to give you a preview, Mr. Kuhn's going to testify first. He'll go through sort of the project background, the site design, and the operations of the facility. And then Mr. Wheeler will testify as to projected traffic to be generated by the project. I've pre-marked exhibit packets that I just distributed to you. They're marked A1 through A8, and we'll touch upon each of them as we go through the testimony. I'll pause there to see if there are any sort of housekeeping questions before I call my first witness.
No, sir.
No? Very good.
Does the board has anything?
Anybody have any?
Nope.
For purposes of the stream, do you want the witness to stand with me? That way they're captured by the mic? Great. All right. Now I'll call Justin Kuhn as my first witness.
We have him sworn in, please.
I do.
Justin, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Justin Kuhn, 430 North Front Street, Wormleysburg, PA.
What's the name?
Justin, Kuhn, Kuhn.
Can you state your company name, please, Justin?
It's IDP Consulting LLC.
And what is your position with them?
I'm the managing partner.
What do you generally do for IDP Consulting?
I oversee all civil engineering and building design projects.
What kind of experience do you have with civil engineering and design?
I have about 25 years of civil engineering site design experience.
Does that include preparing site plans for compliance with zoning ordinance requirements?
Yes, it does.
Have you testified before municipal bodies like this zoning hearing board in the past?
Yes.
Approximately how many times have you testified?
Over 100?
Okay. And do you keep up to date with your educational requirements and your license?
I do.
And just to confirm, you are a professional engineer, is that correct?
Correct.
I'd like to offer Mr. Kuhn as an expert witness on civil engineering and site design.
Is there anybody here on behalf of the township, Marcus? That's going to be appearing?
Bill Rudy, I'm the township engineer.
Any objections? Do you want to be qualified as an expert?
Yes.
You said you
Yes.
have, you have objections?
No, I have no objection.
Okay, thank you. Thought so. That gets your blood going, doesn't it? Mr. Chairman, if the board is satisfied, unless they have other questions of the experience and background of the individual here, you can qualify him as an expert and receive him as such. You can receive him as such, his
Okay.
testimony. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
You can proceed.
Thank you. Justin, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A1 in everyone's packets. Could you identify what that is for the board, please?
It's the agreement of sale for the property.
And does this establish Zenith Construction, Inc. as the buyer of the property and therefore the party was standing to be the applicant tonight?
Yes, it does.
Thanks. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit A2 in everyone's packet. Could you identify what that is for the board, please?
It's an aerial map of the project with the site outlined in red.
And could you just describe generally for the board where the property is located and what kind of characteristics it might have?
Yes, it's along the west side of Church Road, just south of Rapid Hill and Paddletown, would be east of 83. Generally slopes from northwest to southeast, an access point just being north of Paddletown and Church.
And does the property consist of 2 tax parcels?
It does.
And what's the approximate combined acreage of those parcels?
It's about 15.45, I believe.
Okay. And do you recall what zoning district the property is located in?
It is in the village center.
Justin, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit A3. Could you identify that for the board, please?
Yes, it's an existing resource and site analysis.
And did your company prepare this plan?
It did.
Are there any unique features or interesting features that you want to identify for the board about the property?
Sure. Generally say it has steep slopes along a certain portion, stream, small wetland, and some floodplain up in the northeast corner.
And did the zoning ordinance require you to prepare this plan as part of the application?
It did.
And did you take these existing features into account in designing the site?
Yes, we did.
Justin, I'm now showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A4. Could you identify what that is for the board, please?
This is the site layout plan of the proposed apartments.
Could you walk the board through what's proposed on the site, please?
Sure. You see access just north of that Church Road, Paddletown Road intersection. You come into the property to the northwest. As you come up, you'll see parking in the middle with 12 buildings around it, and we've delineated a few areas where stormwater would potentially be, along with an emergency access to the site.
Justin, you testified that there were 12 buildings. Did you mean to say 10 buildings?
I'm sorry, 10 buildings, 12 units in each building.
And is the plan to connect these buildings to public water and sewer?
It is.
We'll revisit Exhibit A4, but just for a second here, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A5. Could you identify these for the board, please?
Yes, they are sample architectural plans from other buildings that Zenith Construction has built locally.
Is there also a sample floor plan included with those building elevations?
Yes, there is.
How many stories approximately are the buildings proposed to be?
They are 3 stories.
Okay, is that 4 dwellings per story then, per floor?
That is correct.
And will each of the dwelling units exceed at least 450 square feet in area?
Yes, I think the smallest one is about 14.7.
Will these buildings be sprinklered for fire protection?
Yes,
Are you familiar with the Newberry Township zoning ordinance?
I am.
Did you design the site plan in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirements?
We did.
And are multifamily dwellings permitted in the village district by special exception?
Yes,
And is that the subject matter of the application tonight?
that is correct.
Is there only one principal use, that is multifamily dwellings, proposed as part of the development of the property?
Yes, 1 use.
And is the property at least 2 acres in size?
It is.
And did you say the buildings will be served by public water and sewer?
That is correct.
During the land development plan process, will you obtain confirmation from Suez Water and the township regarding water and sewer service?
Yes, we will.
Are there dumpsters proposed to serve the dwellings?
Yes, there are dumpsters.
Are they depicted on Exhibit A for the site plan?
Yep, they're labeled as screened dumpster.
What do we mean when we say screened dumpster?
They would have some kind of privacy. That's correct.
Are we proposing any outdoor storage or display as part of the apartment complex?
No.
Section 525-18.3 of the ordinance requires certain setbacks for the buildings, both from property lines, parking areas, and from each other. Does Exhibit A4 depict a layout that complies with all of those setback requirements?
Yes, it does.
And are those setback requirements laid out in the area and bulk regulations table at the top right of Exhibit A4?
Yes, they are.
And then are the setback distances called out on the plan as well?
Yep, they are labeled.
Section 525-18.4 of the ordinance requires at least 30% of the site to be devoted to common open space, owned and maintained in accordance with the zoning ordinance. How much of this site is going to be devoted to common open space?
It's greater than the 30% required.
Does that include open space uses, low-impact passive recreational uses, or easements for drainage?
It does.
Was the open space designed to comply with the open space and greenway design standards?
Yes, it was.
Are any dwellings or buildings proposed to be located in the open space area?
They are not.
Will any open space area that's not wooded be landscaped in accordance with the township's landscaping requirements?
Yes, it will.
And will the open space be permanently restricted from future development?
Yes.
And will the applicant, Zenith Construction Incorporated, own and maintain the open space
They will.
at their sole cost?
Correct.
And will there be a plan for the maintenance of that open space provided as part of the land development plan for the project?
Yes, there will.
Justin, I'm showing you it's been marked as Exhibit A6 in everyone's packets. Could you describe or identify that for the board, please?
Yes, it is a lighting plan for the proposed apartment development.
What are the red sort of concentric circles that are located
That-
mostly on the parking and access drive areas of the
Yeah,
plan?
that shows you the limit of lights in each one of those. As it goes out farther, it's dimmer and dimmer.
And what are the numbers in red kind of scattered throughout in a grid fashion within those red circles?
That is showing you the lighting level.
How is a lighting level measured? Is that in foot candles?
Yes, it is. It's in foot candles.
And is that per the zoning ordinance requirements?
That's correct.
Was this lighting plan prepared and the lighting layout designed in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirements?
Yes, it was.
Are all the proposed lighting fixtures, types, and design appropriate to light the parking area and access drive?
Yes, they are.
And just to be clear, are we showing any light going beyond the property lines onto any of the adjacent properties?
We are not.
So there would be a 0.0 foot candle reading at all property lines, is that right?
That is correct.
Are there dusk to dawn lighting fixtures proposed?
There are.
Will all the lighting be aimed, located, designed, fitted to shine light downward so as to prevent glare or spread of light?
Yes, it
Are any of the lighting fixtures taller than 20 feet?
They are not.
And are the lighting fixtures identified on Exhibit A6?
They are down here in the lower left.
Turning to parking, let's go back to Exhibit A4 since that's a cleaner plan to look at. Is all of the off-street parking for residents and their visitors?
That's correct.
And do you recall how many parking spaces are required per dwelling unit?
3 per dwelling.
Did you testify that there were 120 units?
That is correct.
So how many parking spaces would be required?
360.
And how many parking spaces are provided?
365.
Does that include ADA compliant spaces?
It does.
Are all parking spaces proposed to be paved in accordance with the township's subdivision and land development ordinance and construction improvement specifications?
Yes, they are.
Will all the parking spaces be maintained as long as the apartments exist?
Yes, they will.
Is the parking lot going to be graded and surfaced with a paved, dust-free surface and drained in accordance with township ordinance requirements?
Yes, it will.
And kept clean from and free of rubbish and debris?
Correct.
Will the drainage and maintenance activities be approved as part of the land development plan for the project?
That is correct.
And are the spaces laid out so as to be readily accessible from all of the buildings?
Yes.
And are all the parking spaces at least 9 feet wide and 19 feet long?
They are.
Are there two-way drive aisles proposed in between the parking spaces?
Yes, they are all two-way.
And are they at least 25 feet wide?
That's correct.
So are they designed so that a vehicle may proceed to and from parking spaces without having to move any other vehicle?
That's correct.
And are all the parking spaces and access drives at least 10 feet from any of the apartment buildings?
Yes, they are.
Does that 10-foot setback area include an access walkway for residents going from their cars to the buildings or vice versa?
Yes, to the front door. That's correct.
Are all the parking spaces and access drives at least 8 feet from any side or rear lot line?
Yes.
Are any parking spaces proposed in the public right-of-way of Church Road?
No, they are not.
Will any car have to back out onto Church Road?
No,
Will all the parking spaces be marked with paint?
they will.
Will there be curbing as required by the township's ordinance?
Yes, it will be curbed.
Going to turn your attention to Exhibit A7, Justin. Could you identify this for the board, please?
That was a landscaping plan prepared for the apartment.
And was this plan prepared in accordance with township ordinance requirements?
It was.
How much of the parking lot area is proposed to include landscape area? You might need to go back to Exhibit A4 for this.
It is 8%,
And how much is required to be landscaped?
5%.
So more than what is required is going to be landscaped, is that right?
That is correct.
Does this plan include 9-foot wide planting islands at least every 15 spaces so as to break up rows of parking spaces?
Yes, it does.
And are there at least 10 shade trees proposed throughout the parking area?
That is correct.
Are they proposed on each of those landscape islands?
Yes.
Is there perimeter landscaping proposed within that required 10-foot parking setback between the parking lot and the buildings?
Yes, there is.
And are those shown as the green in front of each building?
That's correct.
Is that going to be trees or shrubs and ground plantings?
Ground planting and shrubs.
Are there buffer yards required along the perimeter of the project?
Yes, there are.
Do you recall how wide they are?
25 feet.
And are those along, I guess, to the south, if you will, where it's a different zoning district, regional commercial office?
That is correct.
And is there room to provide a 50-foot buffer if necessary?
There is, because there's a 50-foot setback there.
And will those buffer yards be landscaped? What's the plan for in there?
Based on the ordinance, depending on what level screening you're doing, there'll definitely be plantings in it, depending on what level there may be fencing and berm as well.
And is it your intention to utilize as much of the existing wooded area as possible rather than chop that down and plant new plantings?
Absolutely.
Will you coordinate that design and effort with the township during the land development process?
We will.
Will you be utilizing native plants for the trees, shrubs, and ground cover?
We will.
Will you provide financial security as part of the land development process for the ongoing maintenance of that landscaping?
Yes.
Are there any outdoor signs proposed as part of the application right now?
Not at this time.
Is there a likelihood that there'll be some sort of entrance sign in the future?
Very likely.
If there is one, will you ensure that it complies with the township's ordinance requirements for location and size?
We will.
Will the development be operated in compliance with all applicable state and federal regulations?
It will.
Justin, the zoning ordinance sets forth general standards that apply to all special exception applications. So, in your professional opinion, is this project consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, recognizing that multifamily dwellings are expressly permitted in this zoning district?
Yes, it is consistent.
Will this development detract from the use and enjoyment of adjoining or nearby properties?
It will not.
Will it change the character of the neighborhood?
No.
Is it your expectation that there are adequate public... Is it your expectation that there are adequate public facilities to serve the project?
Yes, there will.
Is there any floodplain existing on the property?
A small one in the eastern corner, but not much on our site.
And is that depicted on each of the site plans?
It is.
And have you designed around it so as not to encroach within it?
That is correct.
There were only 4 specific criteria applicable to multifamily dwellings in Article 5 of the ordinance. Did we go through each of those and testify as to compliance with each of them?
We did.
And is it your opinion that this project will not substantially impair the integrity of the township's comprehensive plan?
I'd agree.
Last topic for you, Justin. This is not in your exhibit packets. I guess we'll call this A9. Could you identify that for the board, please?
It's a review letter from Bill Rudy, the township engineer.
Mr. Rudy, does the board have this already?
Yes, they do, I believe.
Great. Justin, have you had a chance to review Mr. Rudy's comments that were issued earlier today?
We have.
Do you have any concerns with the comments in Section A for zoning?
Just a question about number 7.
And what's that question?
It deals with the level 3 screening between the village and the regional commercial. Based on our reading of the ordinance, under C2, it specifically notes a buffer yard of 25 feet would be required between multifamily uses or zoning and single-family, two-family uses or zoning districts. So we felt that it would be a 25-foot buffer yard, but we could do 50.
Which you could do 50.
We felt it'd be 25, but we could meet the 50 if required.
Could you meet the 50 without revising the site layout?
We could.
And is that because there's already that 50-foot building setback provided?
That's correct.
On page 2 of Mr. Rudy's review letter, Section C has recommended conditions. Did you get a chance to review those?
We did.
Do you have any concerns with any of those recommended conditions?
Just on number 1, we would, if there would be a condition imposed on building height, we would recommend 45 feet.
And why is that?
The building itself is 41, but building height in the ordinance is measured from the average elevation along the bottom of the building. So there will be slope across the building, so we'll need a little bit more than 41 feet
Okay.
to make that work.
And does the ordinance contain a maximum building height?
It does not.
So is The request to have 45 feet rather than 41 be the limit is that intended to provide flexibility to account for the slopes?
Exactly.
Otherwise, did you have any concerns with the other recommended conditions?
I don't believe so.
And would you be willing to accept them?
Yes.
Those are all the questions I have for Mr. Kuhn.
Thank you. Does the township have any questions?
No, not at this time. Are you gonna, the recommended conditions with regards to Paddletown Road and Old Trail, are you gonna have your traffic engineer discuss?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Anybody have any questions? This month?
Okay.
Yeah, Brick, come on.
Jason? Jason, can you please state your name and address for the record and spell your last name? Oh, I'm sorry. Jason, go ahead.
Jason Wheeler, J-A-S-O-N-W-H-E-L-E-R, with Traffic Planning and Design. The company address is 4,000 Thompson Mill Road, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Jason, what is your position with traffic planning and design?
I'm a project manager.
What does that mean?
Means that I manage transportation planning projects, private sector clients,
How long have you been doing that?
about 17 years.
And what does it mean to manage transportation planning for a project?
We take the applicant's plan and we scope out the traffic impacts. That plan will have an area, develop the traffic impact study, and provide recommendations as to what needs to be done.
What's your educational background and experience?
I have a Bachelor of Arts from Bloomsburg University in Urban Regional Planning. I am a certified professional transportation planner.
And have you testified before municipal bodies like this zoning hearing board in the past?
I have
Approximately how many times?
4 or 5.
I'd like to offer Mr. Wheeler as an expert in transportation planning.
Thank you.
Any questions from the township about his qualifications?
No.
Any questions from the board regarding his
Any questions?
qualifications?
No, no.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, then you can accept his testimony as
You're
an
accepted.
expert.
Thank you. Jason, are you familiar with the Newberry Township zoning ordinance?
I am.
And are you familiar with the traffic and transportation requirements in section 523 of the ordinance?
I am.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit A8. Could you identify that for the board, please?
Sure. This is the traffic impact study scope determination request that we sent to the township back in September. What it does is it outlines what we're proposing to study as far as study area intersections, time periods, background growth, those types of analysis items.
And was this memo prepared in accordance with the township's subdivision and land development ordinance requirements for a traffic impact study?
It was.
You talked about scope. Could you identify for the board the area that you'll be studying as part of the transportation impact study for this project?
Sure. What we proposed in the scope of work was the intersections of Church Road, Rapid Slide Drive, Church Road, Paddletown Road, Church Road, and the proposed site driveway, and Rapid Slide Drive and Paddletown Road intersections. Basically forms that triangle around the church there.
And did the township provide comments on this scope determination request to help you understand what they would be looking for in the transportation impact study?
They did.
And are you in the process of taking those comments and preparing the transportation impact study?
That's correct.
What are some of the elements that will be included in that transportation impact study?
It'll be a capacity analysis. We'll be evaluating the study area intersections to determine how much capacity they have under the existing conditions and in the future conditions with or without this proposed development. We will look at the amount of trips that will be generated by the site. We'll use a pretty standard Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual for distributing those trips amongst study area intersections based on traffic patterns or other types of distribution methodologies, and determining any recommended roadway improvements that are necessary at both site access.
And will that study be provided to the township for review and comment?
It will.
And is it often the case where the township issues comments and you have to go back and revise the study to address those comments?
Yes.
Knowing that the study's not yet complete, can you at least give a sense to the board for what the trip generation rates will be for the facility?
Sure. Based on the trip generation manual, a 120-unit multifamily low-rise housing would generate about 845 new vehicle trips during the course of a 24-hour period on an average weekday. 60 new trips during the AM peak hour, or 72 new vehicle trips during the PM peak hour.
And what do you mean by the terminology peak hour?
Peak hour, in the AM, we generally evaluate the AM peak hour, which is 6 AM to 9 AM, leader time periods, and the PM is from 3 PM to 6 PM. That's when we do our traffic counts. The peak hour is the busiest hour during that time.
So if I understand this correctly, while you're conducting this study, you will gather real counts during each of those 3-hour time periods that you mentioned, and then find the busiest 60-minute period within that 3-hour time period. And that is determined to be the peak hour,
That's
both
correct.
AM and PM?
That's correct.
And do you look at both a weekday and weekend?
Not typically,
Not typically, just a weekday?
just weekday.
Is that
For
because
residential
there's more
developments.
traffic on weekdays than weekend?
Correct.
Do you do this when school is in session?
We do.
And is that common practice accepted by the township and PennDOT when there's a state road involved?
Yes.
Turning to the site plan, which is Exhibit A4. Can you identify where the access drive is on that site plan?
The proposed access drive?
Yep.
Proposed access drive is along Church Road, just to the north of the Paddletown Road intersection.
Could you hold on for a second? Guys, I know that this is, is not taken lightly, but we need you to keep your voices down, please, so that the stenographer can hear them, so that the screen, it can be screened to people who are not here. So if we could please just keep our comments to ourselves for now. You will have time for a public comment later.
Jason, is that access drive designed in accordance with the township's requirements for access drive design?
Yes.
And will the design of that access drive be refined and finalized as part of the land development process in the event there are certain comments that come up during the transportation impact study review?
It will.
Is it your opinion, at least to date, based on what you've reviewed in terms of trip generation and the existing roadway network, that this access drive is adequate to meet the needs of the traffic to be generated by the development?
It is.
I'm showing you what we marked as Exhibit A9, Mr. Rudy's review comments from today. Did you get a chance to look at Section B, which has a single comment regarding traffic?
I have.
Do you have any concerns with that comment?
No.
And then in looking at Section C, recommended conditions, did you see comment or recommended condition number 3 that Paddletown Road and Old Trail 382, that intersection be included in the transportation impact study?
I have.
Do you have any concerns with adding that location to the transportation impact study?
No.
Those are all the questions I have for Mr. Wheeler.
Board have anything? Do you have anything?
Have you been out to the property recently?
I have.
So you've driven down 382 and turned left onto Paddletown Road there to get
Yep.
into there? And you don't foresee 845 new vehicles being an issue driving through there?
Well, it's, I should clarify, it's 845 vehicle trips. So a trip is vehicle entering or exiting the site. Now, that's to be broken down into cars, which would be 422 new cars per day because you enter and exit the site. It's one vehicle.
Okay,
And that's over the course of a 24-hour time period, not, a short window of time. During the peak hours, we would be around 60 trips.
but you would be willing to add the that intersection to your,
Yeah,
survey when you do that?
yes.
You done? You have
And why don't you look at weekends, just to clarify from my understanding?
The general engineering practice for residential developments is to just assess the weekday periods when you are most active, leaving for work in the morning, coming home from work in the afternoon. Saturday, the traffic patterns are more sporadic for a residential site. It's not as concentrated.
Okay, so for this area, you know that the river is there and it's a recreational area, right? Correct? Would you be willing to do a weekend study just because of the fact that we do get a lot of more traffic down through there on the weekends in the summer because of the tourists that come down to the recreational area?
It's something I think we could look into. But then you're getting into when do you do the counts? Is it going to show anything different than what we see on the day?
So it's just something that you could think about? Okay.
anything, Stanley?
Nope. Any questions from the township?
Any questions from township out here?
I have nothing.
And Marcus?
One for council before we begin. You had marked A9, I believe you meant today's November 28th memorandum.
I did.
That'll be A9? Thank you.
Thank you. I've tried to move expeditiously for everyone's benefit. That's been testimony, and I think we covered all 9 exhibits. I'm happy to sit down and listen to public comment if I just reserve the opportunity to provide some sort of closing message to you at the end, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can take public comments from the audience. We'd ask that, given the number of people here this evening, that you be attentive and watchful of what other folks are saying. We'd ask that you not be repetitive. So if somebody has already commented once and you've come up, it's one thing to agree with them, it's another to add something new to the equation. Otherwise, we could have everybody saying the same thing and we'll be here for a long, long time. So that will help move things along. So, Mr. Chairman, you can then proceed with the individuals who wish to come up and testify. We'll swear them in as they come
As they
in.
come up?
Yep.
Do we have anybody wishing to testify for the project?
For or against the project, ask any questions. Mr. Chairman, recognize them, and
You want to, you
You
were
need to
first
co-
back here.
you need to come up to the microphone, please.
Come up and state your name and address. Come up to the podium there.
We'd also ask, given with everybody here this evening, that, that as our astute member said earlier, we're making a record tonight. So when someone's speaking, please hear them out and not interrupt them. Everyone here who wishes to add something to the meeting tonight in that comment will have an opportunity to do so. So we ask for that courtesy of the board and of the witnesses and the individuals that are providing information, please. So, sir, if you give your name and address, and then we'll be, or swear them in first. Give us your name and address, please, and spell your last name.
My name's Scott Wilt, W-I-L-T, 209 Church Road. Okay,
Go right ahead. What do you want to tell us?
okay. I'm the previous owner of the property. And when I sold the property, the price was based on 27.5 per acre. I was only paid for 10 acres, because that's what I sold. The other 2.5 acres were supposed to come back to our possession at the time of the development was finished, or before it started, actually, on the development. His plan is not showing my 2.5 acres in that property. He has a retention pond where my house is. And I'd like to know what the hell's going on. And I have the plans that I signed and agreed to, right here. You want to see them? So I have a discrepancy with these people, because I'm supposed to be getting 2.5 acres back in my name. And I waited 14 years for this. And the agreement I had with Sierra Glen Partners was I live there tax-free. That's my payment for not getting my land back sooner. It was supposed to be developed the first year, and we've been patient with them, and I've waited 14 years to get this land back in my name. Do you have any comments on any of that or anything?
Mr. Andrews, would you like to?
Right here's the two, it's right here in I have the same copies at home.
Mr. Andrews, would you like to respond, please, or ask any questions?
Sure. My response would be, I have no idea about this. Our agreement of sale is for 15.45 acres. Seller hasn't identified any sort of obligation. I'm not saying you're incorrect or suggesting anything else. I'm just saying I'm not aware of anything, and certainly would be willing to inquire. And obviously, we need to inquire with the seller about this issue.
Yeah, because they're going to have to redraw, if they're going to do what they're doing, they need to redraw the plans. You want to look at the plan?
Just look at it.
My 2.5 acres
Over here.
and I only agreed for this driveway to be an emergency road, but I think they still have that. It's still an emergency road.
You want to show it?
Can you show us where it is?
This is my 2.5 acres right here.
So this whole thing.
Yeah, and this is my neighbor John, he owns in the middle of all this. We have a shared driveway. And they have a retention pond, as this road comes in, they have a retention pond right here.
Right here.
Well, okay, hold on, Ashley. Okay, are we putting this on the record or not? Because we need to be able to hear him, and you're asking a lot of questions.
I was just trying to see where he was
I
pointing.
understand, but he's on the record, so we need to have him testify to that. And if you're going to describe where areas are, you need to describe them accurately from the plan as to what they're located, what direction
This
they're
is
at,
lot
what they're
12.
adjacent. That's what we need to
So
know.
we need you to go back to the microphone.
Well, you could use a microphone right there
Oh,
if
yeah.
he can reach it. That'd be fine, we just want to
My
be sure.
plans, it's lot 12.
That's on your plan, right? Okay.
So could you tell us where it's at on the new plans?
It's not.
Well, where would it be on the new plan?
Section right
Oh, they
there.
have a retention pond there.
Right there.
Okay, that's what I thought you had said.
And
So
to-
in relationship to the driveway, the emergency access driveway, where is the 2.5 acres you are describing?
At the end of the driveway, it's at the very end. And also coming here at Paddletown and 382, there was 3 cars in front of me, and it took a while just to pull out because the traffic on 382, as it's coming into town, you gotta wait. And if you're adding that many cars, you're gonna have people back to the church waiting in line. And I hate to see another traffic light go in. I mean, I don't really feel that's necessary. You're gonna have, what, 3 lights in a 1/10 of a mile area or something? That's too many cars.
You want this right there? Yes. Put mark this right there.
And that wasn't the agreement that I signed. I mean, this is supposed to be coming back into my name. So I have a
Unfortunately,
big
the-
problem.
Unfortunately, the board doesn't resolve
I know.
private contractual matters
I know, but
as they are, so
these plans aren't going to go forward because we got something to
are you saying then, and from what I take from your testimony, is that the area you're supposed to be getting is represented by the area on the plan that shows where the stormwater detention pond is?
That,
But-
maybe one apartment
All right,
building.
but that is area that is.
I don't have a copy of that map of the development.
That's right, but that area that you're talking about is area that's currently owned by Sierra Glen.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have a question. Scott, Mr. Will, I have a question. You have a signed agreement as to,
Yes, I do.
so then you have a legal
Yeah, I
binding
didn't bring any of
agreement?
this up tonight. I didn't know I
And
was
there's,
gonna need all this.
like,
Yes, I have
you
a
said before,
contract.
there's nothing we can do about that.
I know, I do have a contract, yes.
I would think there would be another route that you may have to follow that.
I know, I'm
Not
gonna have
here,
to get an
but
attorney. I can see this
I
already.
appreciate your concern.
Yeah. That's a lot
That's-
of concern. I just retired and this is my livelihood.
Yep.
I have a rental property there and I'm dependent on that rental for income as retirement.
We have an owner of the property, as it is now, filing an application and a request for relief under in accordance with the zoning ordinance requirements. That's what is before the board and what we have, and the board has jurisdiction
Well, this is
to
gonna be
resolve.
held-
So this is
gonna
a
be held up
private.
in court.
Yep,
I'll tell you.
this is a private matter with you, and yes, you can obtain your legal counsel and to advise you as to how to proceed best, but just realize that we are limited in what we can do here. Okay? Sure.
Is there anybody else in the audience?
Be sworn in, please.
David Parsons, last name is spelled P-A-R-S-O-N-S.
Address?
Pardon me?
Your address?
Oh, 200 Winding Hill Drive in Edders. 200 Winding Hill Drive in Edders, 17319. Proximity, go down York Haven. From here, probably less than 2 miles. But does it matter? Oh, you know, excuse me. Yes. Oh, you know what? One thing, if you ask me a question, please come to the mic, because if you stream this later, if somebody's standing off to the side, they can't hear the other person. So I'll share the mic with you. It's not a problem. And if you hold it, don't grab the bottom.
No, my only question would be, do you still serve on the Township's Planning Commission?
Yes, I do. I'm the
Okay.
chairman.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, one thing, you know what, you got the number wrong. Section 380.20B2. If you look at Village on page 62 of the zoning ordinance, describes, for the audience, if you're not familiar, what I'm looking at is the zoning ordinance book. And we use this, they use it. Also subdivision land development ordinance. So that's what I'm referencing. So on page 62, it defines what a village is. And it should be 206.2. Multifamily is B2. But that's a minor thing. But major thing is, one question I had is, how does this serve the village concept? Because 206.1 defines what a village is. So and I know, Mr. Kuhn, you asked the question, it's going to fit right in, pretty much, you testified. But I asked any of the gentlemen, how does that fit in with zoning ordinance, 206.1?
The compatibility of a use is predetermined when the municipality expressly permits certain uses in a zoning district. In this case, multifamily dwellings are among the many uses that are expressly permitted in the village district. The purpose provision of the village district, section 206.1 of the version of the ordinance I have, there's 2 versions on the township website, It says that a village as an unincorporated settlement that is part of a township where residential and mixed-use densities of 1 unit to the acre or more exists or are permitted, and commercial, industrial, or institutional uses exist or are permitted. The purpose of this classification is to provide basic convenience, goods, and service to local residents, and it goes on. It then provides a rather lengthy list of residential, institutional, commercial, and public uses that are permitted expressly in the village district.
Why is that? I'm talking about in the paragraph. How does it fit in? Because it has, sure, residential uses described, you can have multifamily dwellings, which is defined by section 525.18, which is, and you have to also, it shall be 2 acres, you know, it gives a definition. But back to my question, how does that fit in? According to the paragraph.
Mr. Parsons, I've answered your question. The concept of fit is going to be subjective. It's going to be subjective. So what you think may be compatible or fit is not an objective standard that one can satisfy, because each and every one of us is going to have a different idea of what fits or is compatible. That's why the standard that we're held to is whether the use is allowed in that district. And it is one of many uses allowed in that district.
No, I agree with you. Right. Oh, and then earlier, you were talking about traffic, you did a traffic study. That's Mr. Wheeler? Okay. Are you aware that the Planning Commission and also the Board of Supervisors recently approved a Dunkin' franchise by Fulton Bank? Is everybody aware of that? Pines Road and Old Trail, recently approved. So you take, and a traffic study was done, and now you're talking about additional homes, 365 units, or no, 365 parking spaces, 360 units. So that was taken into consideration. Could you come up to the mic, please?
If I may ask, so your question is, was the Duncan taken into consideration for this one?
Yes.
It was not identified as a development that needed to be included in the study. Oh, I'm sorry. It was not identified as a development that needed to be included in the analysis for this particular development, because the study area did not overlap.
So, I mean, is this the first time that you're hearing about the approval of the Dunkin' Donuts, the Dunkin' franchise?
It is not the first time I'm hearing of the Duncan franchise. I am unaware of its status in the approval process.
Well, I think it should be included because, that's definitely generating additional traffic.
I would agree it's generating additional traffic, but that traffic is down on Old Trail Road and is not up on the Rabbit Slide Drive Church Road area that we did our analysis.
Well, actually it is. If you just travel up a short distance, make the first left on Paddletown Road, you go up a short distance and you're at that intersection right by the church. So it is, you're not talking about miles, you're talking about a very short distance, maybe a quarter mile, make a left, another quarter mile, if that. So, it's not so it's all included because you take Rabbit Slide, Paddletown, Old Trail, Pines Road, all of it.
Sure, yeah, and yes, there are various different routes of travel you can take to get anywhere.
Sure.
It is something we could look into. We could
Yeah,
include
now that we're
any
looking at
traffic
that Paddletown intersection, could we just include the background data from that Dunkin' Donuts, background traffic?
Sure, we'll add that. Add the Dunkin' Donuts to the traffic study.
And developers, Zenith Construction, they're in, and where are they located?
They are headquartered out of Hagerstown, Maryland, but they have a number of projects in the central Pennsylvania region.
How long have they been in business?
I do not know.
Because I checked it out, and they were incorporated April 30th, 2002. And, but you said what projects in the area can be looked at, comparable?
I don't know of any open and operating. They have several in the pipeline of approvals, South Middleton Township, Carlisle Borough, down closer to Chambersburg, obviously closer to the Maryland border, working their way further north and east.
And you said it's a 15-acre property? And how much land would all the buildings take up?
I don't know that calculation. I know that we have more than 30% of the site devoted to open space. So working backwards from that, something less than 70% would be buildings, parking area, and access drive.
So 30% of 15 is about 4.5, 5 acres. And then, okay, include the commons. The common space would be included with the buildings you have to be.
No, the common open space is part of that little more than 30% number. Everything else would be in the 70% or less number. I think Mr. Kuhn might take a look at this in the meantime.
And also, will this be built in stages, or how is the construction timeline going to proceed?
The developer hasn't decided what the staging will be at this point. I don't envision it being a multi-phase project, which you might run into with residential. Given the, relatively speaking, low number of units, it's likely that it'll make economic sense to construct it all at once, but I don't know that for sure.
The proposed impervious cover for the project is 34%. That'd be buildings and pavement.
All right, thank you. Why this particular location? I don't know if you answered that question before. Has other locations been looked at in the township?
I do not know.
You mean you don't know, or just it never came up, or just, okay, you don't know? Okay, all right. Never, if you don't ask the question, sure, how would you know? Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Dale Jackson. I live at 155 High Street, which I border this development. To give a little bit of a history here, when we had our original comprehensive plan, this property was zoned residential holding. And as the plan that he was showing, Sierra Glens Partners came in. It was a several-year process because they went through the rezoning process. They actually did a zoning amendment. They rezoned it village. Then they actually went through and did a zoning amendment to allow conservation by design in zoning. So it took several years. They actually, in front of this board, had several variances for this property. And I have that plan here, and I would like to offer it as evidence to show. And it actually shows the subdivision that he was referencing, and that was approved by the township. And this was the plan that was submitted. So could I offer this plan as evidence?
Okay, Stanley.
Would you like to review it, and do you have any objections?
This plan contains no signatures and no evidence of being recorded. You know if it was recorded by the developer
Uh,
after approval?
I don't believe he did record it, but it was approved by the planning commission, and it was approved by the supervisors.
My position, Mr. Wiskowski, would be that absent a recording of the plan approval, the property owners are entitled to seek new approvals for the property.
I'm showing what the use was rezoned for. Okay, just,
It's a document that can be accepted,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
this shows what
You give it
was
to Stan.
They went through a several-year
Well-
process.
We'll label this Jackson number 1.
Like I said, they had a variance for steep slopes and that sort of thing. I guess they would have to address that in the new plan because the variance was the minimum afforded for that plan at the time, I would think. I'm gonna try and keep it short. If the board believes that 120 apartments in a single-family residential area does not alter the character of the neighborhood, I would like to at least request a condition, which they already mentioned, which I didn't know. So I was, like Mr. Coons said, the level 1 screening was required. I would like, because a joiner would like to request a level 3 screening, as the engineer had noted. But I just want to make that I'm interested in that. I also have, well, my concern for that was I have an aerial photo of the area. And my concern for the level 3 screening is my driveway is there. So these people from the apartment complex want to walk to the commercial area, my driveway is going to be a shortcut. And I think the screening with the fencing might avoid that from happening. I don't want to be the driveway police, or the shortcut police, or whatever. So I'd also like to offer this aerial photo, which also shows the site context that there was also no multi-use dwellings in the village zoning in Newberry Township. This will be the only one. So I think it does change the character of the neighborhood. It's certainly going to change the character of my neighborhood because I'm right beside it. So I'd also like to offer this. Here's what I'm showing. There you go. Yeah. So I live here. This is the development. I'm showing this.
Can you get a little
This
closer
would
to
be
the,
a short.
can you get a little closer to the speaker there?
This would be a shortcut. So I'm trying to avoid it. So I'm, the engineer mentioned this level 3 screening. I'm asking for a condition of level 3 screening. And I'd like to offer this to them to show what I'm talking about. Is that fine? And I also have the ordinance, required screening, requested screening, requested options. Requested options. I also have a sketch plan of my property showing level 3 screening. Is that fine? Can I offer this to them?
It's your decision whether you wish to
Yeah, I
offer
would
it.
like to at least offer this as a.
Now, we have a number of things. The aerial photo you mentioned, is that being presented?
Yeah.
Aerial photo will be Mark Jackson number 2.
And it kind of shows the context of the.
Okay. And then I haven't, for purposes of the record, I have 3 documents here, which are copies. One is labeled required screening, section 516. Next is it says requested options, and then the third is you described as a site plan of your property.
Yes.
Correct?
Showing the.
Showing screening.
Yes.
The level 3 screening area?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any questions or objections? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
They mentioned public sewer and water. When that plan was approved, and I think is why they never built it. They had 20 duplexes, and they were gonna put in individual grinder pumps in each house and pump up the High Street, which was a half mile. So, I mean, they're saying they have adequate, but I think they should show that they have proof of that. Because the other plan, they said they did, and it never got built because of them. I'm just.
Well, they still have to get that approval, and they still, from the SEO, from the township itself.
Right.
I mean, that's,
Well,
just
it-
because, if the special exception is granted, that doesn't mean they get it no matter what. They still have to meet all the township requirements
Right.
for sewer and water. Okay?
Yep. So, just in conclusion,
Mhm.
I feel that this project does substantially change the character of this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Andrews, any response?
Just to clarify for the record, Mr. Kuhn's testimony that we are willing to accept a condition requiring levels 3 screening along the property boundary where it adjoins the regional commercial office district, which would include that gentleman's property. And I would like the board to take notice, there's been some debate whether apartments belong in the village zoning district. I'll remind you, if you can go back to COVID, in April of 2020, I was before this board on behalf of Landmark Homes, where we obtained approval for 450 apartment units in the village district to the north of this site, off of Red Mill Road and Old Trail Road. So there's precedent for recognizing the compatibility or fit, if you will, of apartments in the village zoning district.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Rob Lane, that's L-A-N-E, and I live at 345 Church Road in Edders. Me and my wife's property borders the proposed development project. I just add that I work as a project analyst, and so I do have some project development experience. I'm not here as an expert, but I do have a little bit to add to what's been said. My main reason for opposing this is road infrastructure. And I have a few questions after this statement too. The entrance and exit point of the proposed project are located on Church Road. And this road is a very narrow road. At many points, you can't even get 2 trucks going at the same time through this road. Very limited sight lines on this road. And there are many children that are along this road also, plus elderly that attend the church right there. When Pines Road, when there's an accident on Pines Road or Pines Road backs up, the effects of people using Church Road as an alternative are major backlogs on the road junction points at the project area. This already shows the effects of additional traffic on this roadway. These roads were just not made to handle an additional traffic load on this. There are fixed structures everywhere on this, the limited road space and limited sight lines. Plus, as has been already said, it's extremely difficult already to get out onto the main road, Route 382 in Newburytown, especially during morning and evening rush hours. I cannot even imagine the backlogs that are going to happen if this project goes through. Another issue I have is that there is, and they mentioned this, there is a wetland area with a swale that goes through the proposed project area, and that also goes through our property too. And this floods with any rain event. So there will have to be major engineering improvements, including fill and ground modifications to mitigate flooding issues. And I just can't see how these ground modifications will not affect water runoff to other properties in the area, potentially even flooding neighboring residences. Plus, there's some potential environmental issues presented by the wetlands. These are obviously economically expensive and very challenging for this project. In addition, as was said before, the water and septic resources required for a project of this size would be an additional burden to the township and its taxpayers. So I'd just like to be here in opposition to this project, and would ask the zoning board members to please, take all of what's been said here into consideration. A couple of questions I have to Mr. Kuhn. I just wanted to know, has there been a Phase 1 environmental review done yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Do you know if there will, there has to be one done, but you know what the time frame for that?
Generally speaking, that would happen before they close on the property with the purchase.
And then, Justin, one question. When you're doing the traffic study, do you take into consideration the type of roadway that is there? And these roads are just very, very small roads, Church Road. Is that into consideration and how much, size of traffic and vehicular traffic can pass even on these roadways?
We do a roadway inventory as part of the traffic impact study, which measures the lane widths, approach grades, those types of things. We measure the lane widths and roadway grades, those types of things during our inventory.
If they're not, I mean, I don't know if they're up to standard or not, but if they're not up to standard, what is done to meet standard road size issues?
I believe the applicant would be subject to the requirements within the subdivision land development ordinance.
And just one more question for Mr. Kuhn. Do you know how much wooded area will be cleared for this project?
I do not know what the acreage will be. But I know the impervious area is about 34% of the site. We know it'd be at least that much plus the stormwater pieces. But it's, some of those areas aren't.
Okay.
Some of those areas aren't.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else? Anybody else?
Josh Grove, 385 Church Road. My property actually joins this as well. My concern, and I'm not trying to rehash, I understand, but is traffic flow. You're putting arguably 90 to 150 cars by my house in prime time when my kids cross the bus to go to school. People already run the stop sign. The intersection is horrendous, Paul, you know. Everything, especially when there's an accident at the fire hall, which there commonly is because someone turns in there, all the traffic going to Reese's Estates and Ridgeview diverts through there. If there's trees down on Pines, all traffic diverts through there. You know, to put this much more traffic on that road is, I think, preposterous. I think it's irresponsible, and my concern is it's going to get my kids hit. Because everybody knows somebody one day is going to be running late to work, and you're going to be speeding. That's my concern, as a father, as a parent. I think it's an irresponsible project, and I oppose it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Back in the corner?
My name is Janice Zorro. I live on 25 Harvest Drive in Edders. Z-U-R-O. I believe that we all live in Newberry Township because we like open area, wooded areas, and less people and less cars. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
My name's Steve Baumgartner. I live at 40. Steve Baumgartner, Baumgardner. I live at 45 Rabbit Side Road, just on the other side of the cemetery. Just had a couple questions for clarification of what was already spoken about. What is a current ADT and what is a proposed ADT? On the road,
Which road specifically?
specifically church, I guess you could say.
Church Road. We do not have current ADT counts at that location.
Okay, so we don't know what multiple the new traffic will be versus the current traffic?
Correct.
Okay. And there was talk about 30, hold on, let me get my information right here. There's this discussion about how much open space, it was 30-some%, I believe. And then there was discussion about how much impervious surface, and it was 34%. What's the other remaining third? 30% open space, 34% impervious. I was assuming that when it was 30% open space, that the remaining 60-some% would be a combination of buildings, driveways, parking lots.
So there'll be a minimum of 30% dedicated open space. There's about 34% of it impervious cover. The rest would be either wooded or lawn condition,
Okay.
but may or may not be part of the dedicated open space, so to speak.
So 34% does include the roadway, the parking, and the buildings.
Absolutely. So there's really about 65% of green space, so to speak.
That's what I was just trying to
Okay.
clarify. Thank you. And I agree with some of the other speakers also that I would oppose it due to the traffic conditions and that Church Road is a very narrow road and not really built for this. And what's the alternative? Will the developer be working on Church Road, or is the township is our taxes and the township gonna be working on Church Road to improve it, since it's not really satisfactory for this development?
Thank you. Sir. Go ahead. You're the only one, I guess.
Banner. All right, Josh Grove, of course. What the gentleman was just talking about, improving the Church Road, the only way you're doing it is if you take Brendan and Rob's yard from us and my yard. That's what's gonna happen. It's gonna take my front yard, my kids are gonna have less room to play, and they're gonna put a car in my yard.
Thank you.
My name is Michelle Hart. I live at 115 Church Road, just a short distance from the entrance and exit of the development. My concern is I like to walk the road, and when you come up on there, there's a lot of blind spots, and it's really not safe right now to walk the road. And what about the school impact? You know, where are these kids going to go to school? Where are they going to shop? You know, our area is getting so overbuilt right now. It's overwhelming. You cannot make a right-hand turn out of Newberry Town on 382 out of Pound Tile Road in the morning or in the evening without fear of being hit by a car. You wait there forever, and you take your life in your hand to make that right-hand turn or the left-hand turn to get in Powhatan Road. I just don't know where people are going to go when they have this development on this very small, narrow road, and that's the concern I have with it.
Thank you. Was somebody else back there?
Yes. My name's Daniel Greenberg, 405 Battletown Road.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sorry. Daniel Greenberg, 405 Battletown Road. I just have a question. What will this affect? Sorry. How will this affect crime with tripling the people in our area?
Just to clarify, we're adding 120 units, not necessarily tripling any specific number of people in any area. This development, like all the other developments, will be served by the local police. We don't anticipate any unusual criminal activity from this complex as compared to any other apartment complex.
120 people is probably more than tripling the neighborhood, though.
Thank you.
That was it.
One up. You want to get closer to the speaker there.
Yes, ma'am. Bill Shutt, 10 Rabbit Slide Drive, Edders. My biggest concern and question would probably be is who's going to pay for the infrastructure for water, sewer, police, fire department? Because you know it's coming back to the taxpayers, and this company is not going to lay out $10 million for the rest of the generations to pay for all these infrastructure things, because there's no way that the sewer system isn't going to handle all this potentially.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I guess no further.
No further comments or questions? Anything further from the township?
Yeah, the only thing we talked about, I'd asked to add a fifth recommended condition, and we talked a little bit about this, that the background traffic from Duncan be reviewed as it relates to Paddletown and 382 in the traffic study.
So would you repeat that again for me? So
Can you?
The background traffic from the Dunkin' Donuts be reviewed as it relates to Paddletown and 382 in the traffic study.
Anybody else have anything? Township?
Yes, I do. My name is Sonny Shin, S-H-I-N, living at the 15 Bridal Court, Errors. Why are you doing the study? Okay? I don't know. I know you guys are not from this area. When you study, traffic study, make sure whenever they have a problem on the 83, whenever they detour, study down how many traffic is going to be. Because I know you guys are not from this area. You've never been there. So please study that. That's all.
Okay, is that it? Anybody else? Guess that's it. There's one there.
My name is Donna Brown. I'm at 210 Church Road on Edders. I'm curious about, is there only going to be one access in and out of this place? Behind at 209 originally, there was talk of a emergency access.
That's correct. We're proposing a second emergency access drive on the church.
At that location,
Which location?
coming out behind at 209. So you're going to bring traffic out this way, out 209, which is basically a private driveway.
You say 209, you mean Church Road?
Correct.
Okay.
I know. That is your proposal.
Yes.
Are you going to do anything to that driveway?
Yes, it'll need to be.
It's a single driveway, it's not even a road.
Yes, it's for emergency access.
Yeah, it's his personal road. The drainage on Church Road, I don't know if the township needs to be aware of that to begin with, is horrible. Anytime we have rain from the church down, every one of those drains gets clogged with leaves. It floods across the road, across from John Rife's property. That whole road is 20 foot wide, sometimes with water.
You probably have to discuss that with the township.
Well, yeah. It's going to be affected on our area.
But the leaves are clogging the drains, is what you're saying?
Well, just the way it's shaped, and it just does not run off. And part of the drain runs down along that property where the Wilt property is at the hill. That whole creek lake turns into a drain. Yeah, it's horrible.
Okay, you have anything on that, Ryan?
I mean, as far as Church Road goes, we'll be looking at them to, provide a stormwater management report that addresses the site and wouldn't make anything worse along Church Road. So.
He's the engineer for the township.
Another question. The property that is currently on this piece of ground the windows are gone, the siding's falling off. It is a collection place for rubbish. It has got trees growing out of it all over the place, and they will not close it up. It's been boarded up I don't know how many times. The stuff gets torn off, and then people are in and out of it. Will that be removed, or will that be boarded up and taken care of so it is not a hazard for this community?
Marcus?
Ma'am, this has been addressed, and at this time, we are in legal actions with the owner at this time. That's as far as I can go with that.
For 14 years, we've been putting up with that.
I understand that. Unfortunately, I was, I started February of 21. I have addressed that situation, and again, legal actions have been taken, and we're in the middle of all that.
Okay, and it will definitely affect us. Our family's farm was there since 1954. We're used to a farm. The property that they're willing to develop across from over there, the bottom of that was also a farm. Yeah, this is going to definitely change things. It will affect this community more than you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more call. Anybody else? Yeah.
Scott Wilt. At 209 on the narrow driveway, she was explaining 4 times since I've lived there, which has been 25 years, it's overflowed the pipe and come over the road, and we didn't have access. It actually washed out twice that we couldn't even drive in. So flooding is a problem. During Agnes, there was a pond, the area they're calling a wet area was a spring-fed pond that was filled in during Agnes. And there is some flooding issues. And it starts in the town, from Newberry Town, from almost the top of Paddletown, Paddletown Road, the whole way down. All that water runs down through my creek, down through that property. So you already get a lot of runoff.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Josh Grove. I just want to put in context what he's saying. About the flooding, it comes right down through my yard. I'm sorry, it comes right down through my yard, the flooding. I've actually got some great videos of my kids kayaking. It's that much. So yeah, it puts a lot of water down through that valley.
Thank you.
Sure. Michael Crone, Krone. I'm at 170 Bobby Jones Drive. I just want to state that it's absolutely ridiculous that we're even entertaining this idea.
Is that it? Anybody? Okay, nobody from township? Okay.
Final comments, Mr. Anders?
I'll be very brief, I promise. I appreciate your patience and your attention through all this. I know it's not easy being a member of the Zoning Hearing Board. There were plenty of comments dealing with traffic and stormwater management, and there were situations where we're not far enough along to provide answers that were likely satisfactory to members of the public. To be clear, those are items that are regulated through your subdivision and land development ordinance and addressed during the land development plan review process. That's why I started my comments very early tonight, making sure everyone understood that this is just the zoning stage and that there will be time during land development to go through those issues. And those issues we will be held accountable to both by the ordinance and by the township's engineer, who will review anything we prepare with regard to traffic or stormwater management. It's not easy being a zoning hearing board member when you get an application like this. But some time ago, and I don't know when, a prior administration of the Board of Supervisors decided that apartments are appropriate in the village district. We didn't make that decision, you didn't make that decision, but we're all kind of stuck with it now. And our obligation coming to you tonight was to show that we comply with all of your zoning ordinance requirements. We put together a comprehensive application, we presented to you plans, and we presented to you expert testimony that unequivocally demonstrates compliance with all those ordinance requirements. Township engineer proposed or recommended what was 4 and now 5 conditions of approval, and we've accepted on the record a willingness to have those conditions imposed upon any approval, and that's what we would ask for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. You have anything, Stanley? You have anything?
I don't have anything else, no. If you'd like to take a motion to recess and deliberate, that would be your next step.
I'll make a motion for recess and deliberation.
All those in favor? Aye. Nays, motion carries.
docket number.
Okay, we bring this meeting back to order. Do we have a motion to approve or disapprove?
I'll make a motion to deny the request for a special exception pursuant to section 380 20B 2B1 of the zoning ordinance, given to us by Zenith Construction.
Is that it?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Nays? Motion carries. Yeah, go ahead. See her.
Before I forget, you guys, I've got signature pages for everybody to sign. Okay? So for both applications, to save you guys a trip down, so just remember.
Yep. We got another meeting here coming up here for another. Hi. How you doing? We don't have to do the flag, do we, Stanley? No, I don't want to. You're gonna pull that door shut, Ashley. You ready? Okay, we got another docket for zoning hearing board for docket 2210 Zenith. No, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Did you take mine?
I did, but I gave it back to you.
No.
I didn't know I gave it back to you.
No, there it is.
You go, hon. No, that's not the right one. That's the one I gave back to you. You need the other one.
I got it. Okay, we're going to do docket 2211. Brandon Strauss, 1515 Red Bank Road, Dover, PA, 1715. Applicant is requesting special exception to pursue it to the section 380-28.b 6B5 and variance to section 380-59A 41A of zoning ordinance to allow non-commercial keeping of livestock on their property with less than 5 acres in the rural residential zone on the property of 1515 Red Bank Road, Dover, PA 17315, being tax parcel 39000G 0034 HO 000000. We don't have to swear. We don't have to swear him in and do it.
Yes. Okay, an email was sent out to York Daily Record to, for the public notice, public hearing notice on November 7th, 2022. The advertising dates were scheduled for November 10th and 17th of 2022. The building, the township building, it was posted at the township building on November 7th, 2022. Mailers were mailed out within a 300-foot radius of the applicant's address at November 15th, 2022, and property was posted November 10th, 2022.
Anything else you'd like to report or advise the board regarding this application?
I would like to report a few things. One, this did come to us as a complaint that was filed back in September. There was a warning letter that was sent out prior to receiving this application. In the time since the application was submitted, we have received several complaints of animals getting out. One being last on November 21st of 2022, and when I arrived to the complainant's home, which was Doris Sneed and Richard Sneed, there were animals free ranging on the property beside them. There was a turkey, several ducks. In fact, when I was out on the property of the Sneed residence, the turkey actually did cross over the property line onto the Sneed residence. There was evidence of goat droppings on their sidewalks as well. With the ordinance, with the ordinance for keeping non-commercial livestock, they are to keep the animals fenced in, and they're supposed to be secured. And as per section 380-59A 41, and I can submit all this information if you need to as a evidence. The only other thing that I have, and this hasn't been discussed with the property owners as of yet, but with them having chickens, we do have a chicken ordinance which they would have to abide by and submit an application, permit for that.
Is that all you have?
That's all I have.
Mark, just on, you guys don't have any. Is the applicant here? Do you want to come to the podium and state your name?
Get sworn in, please.
Yes. Brianna Strauss, Brianna Strouse, 1515 Red Bank Road, Dover, PA. All right. I am here asking for a land variance to grant permission to keep the animals that I currently have. I do have 2 goats. They are of 6 months of age. They're pygmy goats. The male is neutered, so there is no chance of them having any offspring. I do have them in an enclosure. I have about a 250 square foot radius of fencing with the shed that they are able to go into. There is a heat lamp provided and water 24/7. I had gotten the goats in September, so they were still growing and they were still, babies. I had taken them from where they were born, so they were with their mom and dad. And during that transition, they were a little vocal as they were becoming used to the new environment. And I have been trying to critique the fencing as they have been getting older. I do have other modifications that I want to pursue and bring to the board if I'm granted permission to keep the animals. I just had put a halt to developing any other thing, like making the fencing better and things like that, just because of getting the notice in the mail. I wasn't sure what route I was going to have to take with if I was going to be able to keep them or rehome them. So if I am granted the access to keep them, I will be continuing to make modifications to where they can't get out. When they do, it's seldom, but I know that I understand that is a problem. But besides that, they are well taken care of. I have been a licensed vet tech since 2018, so I do know how to properly care for them and provide ample nutrition and enrichment for them to, stay busy and happy. And I love animals. They're, in a sense, my children, and I understand if, if they disturb the neighbors, I want to try to make amends and be able to, keep them, but make modifications to where they don't get out at one occasion. And then I do have a copy of my license for my vet tech. I also do have my chicken permit. I did submit my application and I was granted permission for that. Is that something that I can offer to you?
You want to bring it, Daniel?
Yeah, that was for the chickens, and then.
We get a copy of this, Marcus? Yeah. Just for the record. Sorry about that, I didn't recall.
Oh, it's okay.
And then if you could, that would be great. Oh, here, Marcus, why don't you take this as well? I'm sorry. I didn't realize you was handing me that too. Just make a copy of each.
Does anybody have any questions for?
Is there anything else that you have to add?
Not at this time.
All right. Your property, okay, is that your primary home?
Yes.
Okay, and what kind of outbuildings do you have on the property now?
I have, for the animals, it's a shed. I would say it's about a 10 by 10. I do have a heat lamp out to it and several watering points for them. I do have roosting available for them as well. So, yes, I have some in the shed, and I also have some in the fenced enclosure as well for them to be able to perch and roost at night.
So you've got a 10 by 10 shed. What kind of a home do you have?
A single-family
Bi-level?
home.
Yeah, single family. Is it bi-level, ranch, two-story?
It's a single floor with a basement. I guess you could say like rancher style.
Ranch with a basement?
Yeah. And then I also do have a garage.
Attached or not
detached.
Detached garage, great. One car, two car?
One car. And then lastly, I do have another shed. It's about the same size as the 10 by 10. It's just in a different location. It's in between the chicken coop and the garage.
And what's that used for?
Right now, I just have it for storage. I have my kayaks in there and some other odd and ends.
For the record, we'll just mark them applicants exhibit 1 and 2. 1 is the permit, 2 is the. How large is the property?
I have 1.7 acres. I've been there since December of 2020.
When did the first arrive? Did they all first arrive in September?
Yeah. Yes. The chickens, they were more so like July, but the turkeys and the goats, they were September, beginning of September. And I have raised them in the past, so I'm familiar with their demeanor and their needs.
Six chickens, how large are the chickens?
Yes. And the chickens, they don't currently lay eggs, they're still young, but they should start early spring, and at that time I will be, of course, utilizing the eggs for food.
That's food for you. Right?
Yes.
All right, we've got two goats, chicken goats. What size are they?
I would say they're about 25 pounds, and they're about 6 months old now, so they should be reaching their full weight here shortly.
What's an average full weight?
About 30 pounds. Yeah, for the pygmy goats, yes.
We've got two turkeys.
They are Royal Palm turkeys. I have a male and a female, and they are roughly 6-7 months old as well.
Okay. How much are they?
I'd say maybe about between 10 to 15 pounds.
That maturity, what's the
Probably what they are currently. So I would say 15 max.
All right, now you've also got 4 ducks out there, right?
Yes.
What kind of ducks?
They were assorted ducks, so they're different colors, but they're all roughly the same size, which I would say maybe about 7-8 pounds. But they are bonded, they're in pairs.
Do you have an enclosure area out there that leads you to the property?
Yes.
I'll show you the copy that's attached.
Okay.
It looks like it's about 50 feet wide, and it's about 35 feet deep, so 25 feet deep.
Yeah.
Kind of a round shape. Okay. Where is this at on the property?
That is, so when you pull into my property, you come into the driveway, the garage is, there, and then there's a middle shed, that's why I call it, that's the storage one where I have the kayaks and things, and then, So you got the garage, you have the middle shed, and then you have the chicken coop. So it's, I'd say it's about, it's about 10 yards from the property line that runs on the right-hand side of my property that divides me and the neighbors. And then from the road, oh my goodness, it's at least, I'd say 50, 60 yards from the road. And I would also, you know, be willing to move said enclosure if I needed to move it.
If I'm facing your house, which way is north and south?
If you're facing my house, you're looking at my house, it would be
From the road.
south. Well, from the road, I guess that would be,
I'm standing on the road looking right at your house in front of me, which way is north?
north would be to the right. Yeah.
The rest of your lot looks, is it wooded back there?
It's half and half, so I would say roughly the yard there is an acre or just under, and then I have pretty much the same amount of yard there, woods, and it goes back in pretty much like a rectangle shape, roughly.
Looks like you're located at the intersection. of the
Yes,
road.
yes,
That's
and
not where
BAP
we went
Speedway
through.
is right over the hill there.
Yeah, the road is actually
Yeah.
This area that we described with your buildings and the fenced in, goat enclosure, et cetera, is that whole area, the 50 by roughly 25, is that all enclosed?
That's
By the
all,
fence, or-
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Because it says fenced with bird enclosure covered with vinyl netting for security, so that's in the front there, that's all enclosed. It says tarp on top of netting, shade shelter while outside, so that's, this entire perimeter is fenced, is that correct? I'm pointing to that on the plan. This whole
The-
perimeter is fenced?
This here, so all of this, that's all fenced.
That's what I'm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
So the entire area is fenced, okay.
Yes. And I do have around the perimeter of the fencing, I have, you know, like logs and cinder blocks to prevent them from getting out underneath the fence. And again, I want to upgrade the fencing, and I just put a halt to it based on today's, you know, final
When
outcome.
was the fencing installed?
The beginning of September.
So how do you explain the fact that animals are running free when you were up, you said November, just recently, right? Marcus, was that right?
Yeah, the 21st
Of November?
of November, and we also received a call concerning 2 goats that were out on the roadway with a turkey in that area.
Okay, so that's my question, is how did that happen?
Right. Yeah, so I'm assuming they can kind of climb over the fence and jump out. And I was hoping to get a little bit of a taller fence and a little bit more sturdy.
How tall is the fence?
It is 4 foot.
The property is located on either side of you, I guess that would be to the north, that's the house next door.
Yeah.
Grant Rapids, Berlin, right?
Yes.
And then it looks like to the south of you, going down around the bend, looks like that's a single family home back there, is that right?
Yes.
And what's across the road from you on the other side of the street?
That is a single-family home as well.
Okay, and what abuts you to the rear, right back into the property?
Mm-hmm.
Is that by those homes, or is it?
So there is a creek bed at the very back of my property, and then it opens up to more wooded land and a field. I'm not sure whom owns that, but there's no houses back there that I can see from my property.
pictures here that they were laying here. I guess you gave them to Marcus. I don't know. If
I'm
you-
not sure where these goes. Are those your pictures? that you
Yes,
provided?
yep, I provided those when I
just
submitted the
picked them up there. They
application.
were in an envelope here.
Yeah, leave them
Directly across the street from you, what is located there?
That is currently an open field. If you're in my yard and you're looking across the road, on the left-hand side, it's all field, but in that same property, just on the right-hand side, they are building a house currently. So I don't know if they're going to be dividing that land and building another house, but right now there is a house in the works. But that's all that's across the street. There is another house, like across the street beyond that field, if that makes sense. If you were to go through the intersection and make your way towards Baps, there's some houses along there.
Anybody have any questions for them?
How do you take care of your animals?
So for that, I have pine shavings and straw in the coop in the shed, and I go out there and I just I use a rake and I rake all that together, and then I distribute it throughout the enclosed area, in hopes that that's good fertilizer for the soil, and then I would use it for plants that like gardening as well too.
Are you planning on getting any more animals?
No. No, I am not. I am perfectly happy with the little group that I have.
He wants somebody else.
Marcus, for the chicken permit, what else is required by the township? That's not a zoning issue, that's a regular ordinance of the township.
That is correct.
So what's required when you get a permit for the care and keeping of,
Um,
in this case, chickens?
Yeah, okay, chickens, they have to be enclosed. They're not able to be free-ranging, and they have to be protected both from outside predators as well. So,
So there's no specific fencing requirements there?
no, it's just as long as they can, they're secure.
As long as you, all right.
They have to be secure, they can't be free-ranging the property.
Does the chicken ordinance, that applies in every zone?
Correct, as long as you have up to a half acre of land,
As long as you have up to a half acre?
correct.
If you have more than a half acre, then?
Well, again, it kind of depends on, then that kind of falls into zoning. All right, so if you're in an agricultural area or rural resource, you can have up to 2 acres of land and have, you won't need the actual permit.
But
I believe,
But not in this zone. This zone is.
no, that's rural residential,
This
I
is
believe.
rural residential,
Correct.
so this falls under the non-keeping of livestock, right?
Yes, but they, in the ordinance, they would have to have up to 5 acres of land.
Yes, under the zoning ordinance.
Correct, under the zoning ordinance.
So I just want to make sure I understood the scenario at this point. So the township would allow up to 6 chickens if you have up to a half an acre of land.
That is correct.
If you have more than a half an acre of land, you would then fall under.
No.
You fall under zoning and they would not be able to get a permit.
Actually, that's not correct.
Okay, then you can correct me.
Yes,
That's all I
so
wanna make sure I understand.
you have to have at least a half acre of land to have chickens. And depending on the area and if you have up to 5 acres or not, that would change from the permit that's required by the chicken ordinance and if you could have chickens without the permit.
Okay.
Okay, so because she has less than 5 acres of land,
Right.
she falls into the chicken ordinance. Or she would have to get the special exception, which she's asking for. But that's more for the turkeys, ducks, and the goats.
I was getting to that. Those are the other animals. I just wanted to make sure I understood the chicken part as to how the township ordinance fits into this with the zoning ordinance. So, for sake of argument, if you did not have the goats, the turkeys, and the ducks, you could have the 6 chickens, you've got your permit, in fact, you
She has her permit, she's good with the chickens, that's not an issue here.
That's the maximum too, is 6,
Correct.
period?
And no, yeah, maximum of 6 chickens and no roosters.
Okay. And no rooster, and you don't have any roosters?
Correct, no roosters.
Okay. So now that brings us to the 2 goats, the 2 turkeys, and the 4 ducks. And township does not have an ordinance that covers those, so that falls under the zoning.
Correct, under the definition of livestock, it falls under the zoning.
And that's where we come in with the minimum of 5 acres.
That is correct.
We need the variance you get for that, because you only have 1.7.
Correct.
That's how you see it, okay. All right. Thank you. Just wanted to be clear on what notices went out and why they were going out. Are there any other issues?
Stanley, just to be clear, no notices of violations. They were sent out, they were mailed out the day that they came in with the application, so I've wiped that off the record. So the only thing that has been sent out was a warning letter at this time.
And the warning letter had to do with the goats, the turkeys, and the ducks, correct?
And the chickens at the time.
At the chickens at the time?
At the time, and they since rectified that situation, so that's not an issue. Okay?
If you guys have any questions, please.
Anybody have any questions down here? Steve? With your property out there, other than its size, is it level, is it subject to steep slopes? Does it-
It has a slight incline slope as you go back through the property, but generally, majority of it's just flat. But there's some slopes around the house. There's an embankment on the back side of the house where the old septic used to be. But when I had moved in, the septic had been altered and moved lower down on the property. But besides that slope around the house there, the rest of it is flat.
So you have septic and well water,
Yes.
Hi, you mentioned on your first narrative that you would be willing to move the animals if that was requested. Would you have enough area in the back part of your property to be able to provide for all the animals back there? And
Yes, I do have ample amounts of space that I can move them farther down on the property where like the woods line meets the yard there. It does open up, it's like a mouth when you walk in there, it's open. Plenty of room that I can move the enclosure down there. That was kind of on the back of my mind to do that anyhow. I just didn't want to make any big moves until coming, in front of you and getting an ultimate decision if I can keep them or not. But if I needed to move the enclosure, that's something I'm more than willing to do.
you also mentioned about the goats were a little loud when you first got them. And you mentioned that now they've calmed down a lot.
Yes.
Between the goats and the turkeys and the ducks, how would you say the noise level?
Sure.
is?
I think when I go outside to go and, take care of them, the turkey might gobble once or twice, but the goats, they may baa a couple times. But as far as me being able to hear them in the house, that has lessened significantly. They were vocal, again, like the first week I brought them home, just because they were babies. They were recently weaned off of the milk and from their mom and things, so that was a huge adjustment. But I don't think that they're overly noisy. In the neighborhood, I hear other dogs, and I do hear other livestock, peacocks and roosters, which doesn't bother me a bit. But I do hear that in the background, as well when I'm outside just doing daily normal tasks around the house. But if I am taking a treat out to them or something like that, they may be a little more rambunctious. But that's something that I'm always, conscious of. I don't want them to be disturbing anyone around me. And I try to give them things for them to have enrichment so they are occupied and they're not causing a disturbance. So I try everything in my power to make sure they're happy, and I will keep making improvements as well.
When you improve the enclosure that you have them in, you mentioned getting a taller fence. What about putting something on top of the fence too? Because I know the turkeys can fly.
Right.
And the goats can climb.
Yep. I do have vinyl, like poultry netting. It's black and it's made out of vinyl, and it's pretty resistant. So if a predator were to try to come down into the enclosure, a hawk or something like that, it should be pretty foolproof where they can't get in, and vice versa with the turkeys going out. I know that they have on occasion gotten out, and that is, I'm assuming from the goats, they do try to climb out of the pen, and when they do that, they do disturb the netting and how it's attached to the fencing. So when I do, notice that they're out, I immediately go out there, gather them up, and try to readjust the fencing to, where they may have kind of ran it down a little bit. But I have a game plan as to what other kind of fencing I would want to use in replace of that, just to make everything overall more sturdy and to ensure that they don't get out, because that's the last thing I want to do, is cause a disturbance to anyone or that the animals are in harm as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Maximum height is 6 feet.
Under the chicken ordinance, there's no requirements for the type of structure or enclosure that's required. Just have to be enclosed.
It has to be enclosing, it mentions a chicken coop, but it basically, they have to be enclosed, yeah, and secure.
You want to come up and testify? You want to go over the mic and then get sworn in?
My name is Kim Olsey. I am actually, I'm sorry. I do. My name is Kim Olsey. I'm actually speaking on behalf of my parents who live at 1495 Ernie Road, which is the property that borders 1515. Ms. Strauss is seeking special exception of the zoning ordinance to allow non-commercial keeping of livestock on a property with less than 5 acres in a rural resident zone. My goal this evening is to hopefully persuade you to deny this exception. Ms. Strauss currently has 3 dogs, 6 chickens, 2 turkeys, multiple ducks, and 2 goats on her property. The ability for her to keep the livestock she blatantly established on her property without checking zoning ordinance is why we are here this evening. Ms. Strauss moved onto the property about 2 years ago. At the time, she had 2 dogs. My father communicated with her that he did not want her dogs in his yard. Her response was that she would come and clean up any poop left behind. My father reiterated that no, he did not want the dogs on the property, period. Since then, Ms. Strauss has not responded to any attempts to face-to-face communication. She will ignore any knocks on the door when she is home. This also included Mr. Brandt's knock on the door on November 21st. The hell that woman has put my elderly parents through with her animals started in March of this year with her then 2 dogs. The dogs were permitted to roam freely when left out of the property, out of the house. They would daily come up onto my parents' property and terrorize them. They would bark and growl. My mother has multiple times been cornered by the more aggressive dog. The dogs were even on the road chasing vehicles, especially motorcycles. The dog would bark and be aggressive to anyone who came onto their property, and of course the dog used the yard as a bathroom. My elderly parents feared for their safety every time they stepped foot outside of their home. Mid-March, my parents contacted the dog enforcement officer who served Ms. Strauss notice on March 16th. While she has kept better containment since then, she has added a 3rd dog. But more importantly, the dogs are now permitted to bark nonstop for hours on end. The barking can also be heard inside my parents' house, so they have nowhere to escape to get any peace and quiet from the excessive barking. Towards the end of August, the menagerie began to appear. First the chickens, followed shortly by turkeys, ducks, and goats. Like the dogs prior to being served, these animals are free roaming. She makes no effort to contain them on her property. My parents are constantly plagued with ducks, chickens, turkeys, and goats in their yard. Their yard and porch regularly contains excrement from these animals. The goats, like the dogs, are aggressive. They have chased and cornered my elderly parents in their yard numerous times. The goats have caused property damage by eating trees, plants, and shrubs. The fowl are non-stop scratching, pecking in the yard and at the flowers. As evidence, I have pictures of these animals on my parents' property. The pictures are also dated on the back. On September 1st, my parents contacted the Township Ordinance Officer, Mr. Brandt. He came out and inspected, and it is my understanding that notices were sent, as that was actually addressed, was sent to Ms. Strauss about ordinance violations. The only visible response to the notice she was given from my parents' perspective was she enlarged the livestock areas on the property, but the animals continued to roam free and terrorize my parents and destroy their property. On November 21st, my parents were at the end of their limit with constantly having unwanted livestock in their yard. They once again walked out onto their porch to have it covered in animal feces. My mother knocked on Ms. Strauss's door only to be met with no response, and she was home. My mother then called Mr. Brandt, who took the call and came to my parents' home. While he was there viewing the damage, one of the turkeys walked into the yard. He also went and knocked on Ms. Strauss's door and was also met with a non-answer. I do not understand why Ms. Strauss thinks that it is okay to allow her animals to terrorize my parents. The time frame for this is 9 months with the dogs and 3 months with the livestock. I do not understand why she thinks it is okay to cause extreme emotional distress to 2 elderly people who have lived peacefully on that property for over 55 years. The township has given her warnings about her violations, but we are here tonight because Mrs. Strauss's entitled attitude, she thinks filling out a piece of paper and getting your stamp of approval just makes what she is doing okay. If you would elect to grant her exception, what are my parents' rights? Who is protecting their property? Even more importantly, who is keeping them safe? Not only from physical harm, but from the emotional stress, the months and months of torment Ms. Strauss's irresponsibility, lack of respect, and total disregard for human decency towards her neighbors has caused them. I would also like to address she's claiming to have enclosures for these animals. The goats were on my parents' property twice today before 10:30. They are on the property multiple times a week. And as it was already reported by Mr. Brandt, not only were they on my parents' property twice already today, they were also on the road. She talks about plans for expanding the enclosure. But what about immediate plans to protect my parents and to keep these animals off of my parents' property? She talks about making amends to the neighbors. She does not even answer the door whenever attempts are made. She obviously knows these animals are on my parents' property, but she does not talk to them. She does not do anything to attempt to make these amends that she has claimed here today. She plans to enclose the property and make it better. What are the immediate plans as of today to keep these animals enclosed and off my parents' property and off the road? Thank you for your time.
Do we need her address?
Yes, you do, please. Can you spell the last name? And the parents are, what's their names? Doris, okay. Sneed? And their address next door is again, Ms. Strauss, is there any comment that you'd like to make from your phone at this time?
Right. So I just want to start off by addressing the dogs. That's not why we're here this evening. I had talked to the dog warden about that issue that happened over a year ago. She just asked for proof of the dog's license and rabies tags, which I was able to get to her that day. And there hasn't been any issues since. If I'm outside with the dogs, yes, they do come out in the yard without a leash. And the dogs are protective of their yard, as they should be if anyone comes onto the property. But as far as them barking, I mean, they, average amounts of barking from them, but I do hear from surrounding properties their dogs barking as well. Again, that doesn't bother me, but it's not only my dogs on that road, let alone in that area, that are barking. And as far as the goats getting out and things, again, I brought the goats home, and a week later I had a notice in the mail saying I had 30 days to get rid of them. I had come in here, talked to Mark, and said about applying, for the land variance. I was prompt to do that. I would have done that to begin with. However, I didn't know that you had to have 5 acres or more to own said goats. Or else I would have came in to get a permit or the land variance initially. And so that's the only reason that it's still the fencing that it is. And again, like I said, if I am granted the permission to keep them, that will be altered, and I will bring in updated pictures and everything that you would need on your end as proof. But that's the only reason as to why I haven't made changes happen sooner, is just because I wasn't sure if I was even able to keep them or not. I will say, when I work 40, 50 hours a week, when I come home from work, the goats are always in the shed. When I come home, I feed them, water them. If I'm off that day, I'll let them out a little bit when I'm out there with them, just so they can graze on the grass and things like that. But as far as the goats cornering anybody or anything like that, I've never seen that. The demeanor and nature of a pygmy goat is not to corner anybody. So I personally have never seen that.
I think she was talking, the dogs were cornered her.
Yeah, she was saying that too, but I think she had said something about the goats as well. But either way, we're not here for the dogs. They had been addressed a year ago.
Anybody have anything? Anybody else have anything back here?
Mr. Ralph, I do have a question for you. And you were coming here to get the variance. My question would be is why would you make every effort to make things secure up until this point? That the
Right.
animals did not get out of their enclosure.
Right.
I mean, on multiple, I've had several complaints from the time that we first spoke till now.
Mhm.
So, I mean, me personally, if I was trying to get a variance or a special exception, I would do whatever I could to make sure that those animals were enclosed and secured. And it doesn't seem like you took the necessary steps to me, being the individual having to go out on, several times because of reported incidents.
Right. Right. So the fence that's up now was ample for when they were babies, when I first brought them home. And then a week later, I get the notice in the mail saying that I have to remove them from the property. That's why I didn't want to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on a fence that I may have to just rip down anyhow. I will go out and, get said fence, and that's no problem at all. I just didn't want to do that if I was going to have to remove that and all of the animals anyhow. So I was just trying to make things work with what I have until the hearing.
I have a question for Marcus. Under the ordinance, where it says that they have to be secure, I mean, is that at all times, or is there times when, like she said, she could let them out and graze on the grass? Is that okay?
If she's out with them, that's one thing. But the problem is, and the issue that I've seen on several occasions, are that the animals are out, and like it was brought up on the 21st, there was a vehicle in the driveway. I knocked on the door. I got no response.
Yeah, and I was
And there was several of the ducks out. The male turkey was out, and he crossed over into your neighbor's property while we were standing out there. Now, I don't think he posed any threat personally, but it's the fact that, the turkey was outside of its enclosure. And again, when I knocked on the door, I got no response.
Okay. So on the 21st, I was home. I don't have a doorbell, and I have 3 dogs. And if someone only knocks once and I'm down in the basement, I'm getting a shower, the list goes on, I may not hear that. So You know, if the weight car was there, yes, I was home, hence why the animals were out, because they were out. I had them, it was a beautiful day. But, you know, I don't have a doorbell. I have an old house.
Okay. My question is, you didn't hear the dogs barking profusely when I knocked on the door?
I heard them barking, but I was doing laundry downstairs. I didn't know what they were barking at. Didn't think anyone was showing up at my house that day.
Okay, well, I
Okay.
knocked, I knocked a couple times. I just, you know, if my dog's barking, I usually would address it.
All right, moving on from that subject. So, for you, if you were inside and not on the property or not out there with your animals, I mean, that doesn't seem like you were supervising your animals. Were you supervising them or were you doing laundry?
I was doing laundry, but I was out with them, came in, threw a load of laundry in to go back outside.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do you have anything? Todd?
Sorry. Corey Lowe, C-O-R-E-Y, L-O-W-E. Live at 872 South Main Street, Red Line. You're talking about complaining about droplets of animal feces on your yard and stuff. Well, how are you preventing all the other stuff in the sky? From the deers that graze the woods, groundhogs eat up your shrubs and stuff like that, and you're complaining about that stuff? Like, how are you supposed to prevent, like, birds poop all day long in the sky, don't they? I'm just trying to figure out how that's getting prevented. We get deer all day long in our yard, but, you know, they destroy stuff too. They eat grass. They, you know, that's what I'm going at. That's all I had to say.
Is that it? Do we have a motion to deny or anything?
I'll make a motion
request?
for recess for deliberation.
Is there a second? I'll second. Grant second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Motion carries. Call this meeting back to order. Do we have a motion to,
I'll make a motion to deny the special request and variance as written by Brianna Strauss.
I'll second the motion.
all those in favor? Nays? Motion carried. Do you have anything else, Stanley? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Brent seconds it, and all those in favor? Nays? Motion carries.